Step into the Oracle Parlor, a podcast where those interested in witchcraft, psychic abilities, ghosts, and all things paranormal come to sip and spill the magical tea. This parlor is a space to grow by maintaining our curiosity over fear when it comes to the spooky and the paranormal. I'm your host, Jenny, otherwise known as Fantasma Witch. I'm a previous visual storytelling artist from animation, now full-time psychic witch, who is getting her MA in psychology to become a licensed therapist. Every other episode, I will share my paranormal experiences, different witchy experiences on a variety of topics, while other episodes, I will be talking with witchy guests of all backgrounds, from writers to artists to well-known social media witches, so we can learn about their practices and how they grew into their personal power. So get cozy and grab your tea. It's time to get mystical. Hello, my mystical besties. Welcome back to the Oracle Parlor podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about energy vampires. I'm sure you've heard of them. I'm sure you've read about them. TikTok loves to talk about it. So let's get into this discussion. But before we do, like always, the following is based off of my personal experiences and my current beliefs. I'm not here to convince you that I had these experiences or to make you believe what I believe, but simply just to share these experiences with you. My beliefs may change from when I record this episode, and that's totally normal. Like always, I will be doing my best to include any references in the episode description for anyone who is interested. And if you have your own story about this topic, or really any story that you'd like to share, be it paranormal, different witchy experiences, please feel free to share it with me and possibly have it read on the podcast. You can send your stories to oracleparlorpod@gmail.com, oracleparlorpod@gmail.com. So let's get into it. Energy vampires, or sometimes known as psychic vampires. What are they? So, for anyone who doesn't know, energy vampires or psychic vampires, I'm going to refer to them as energy vampires. These are people who intentionally or unintentionally, it can happen, feed off of your emotional and your psychic energy. Unlike energy work, what has been taken is not being replaced with more energy. Thus, it leaves us feeling drained. It leaves an empty space. It can leave us feeling depleted of energy. So, again, when we're doing energy work, the idea, depending on the modality, because this is a very broad term when we're talking about energy work, there's all different kinds. There's Reiki, there's chakras, there's um, a whole plethora of energy work, and everybody has their own variety, their own flavor. Typically, though, when doing energy work, if you're clearing things out, you're usually putting things back in, or you're bringing in flow to clear out the system and put in uh, fresh energy. That's kind of the idea. But when it comes to energy vampires, they're not actually replacing, they're just taking and taking and taking. So, before we dive too far into this topic, before I kind of start talking about my experiences with it, I really, 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 really want to make it very clear that we don't want to cross that fine line of spiritual bypassing when it comes to talking about this subject. And I say this because sometimes I see people and I hear people talking about energy vampires with anyone and everyone. And we want to make sure that we aren't just labeling anyone who is difficult, boring, annoying as being an energy vampire, right? And there's, again, this very fine line. So I want to give an example. If anybody here has ever seen the show What We Do in the Shadows, I love the first couple of seasons. I haven't seen the latest ones, but I really enjoy What We Do in the Shadows. And the TV show that's come out more recently, not the movie, they had a character in it named Colin Robinson. And Colin Robinson, unlike the other vampires in the show who drink blood and are very much the traditional vampire that can turn into a bat, Colin Robinson is an energy vampire. And Colin Robinson is a really funny character. And, you know, like many metaphysical, psychic, or paranormal depictions in media, Colin Robinson as an energy vampire is exaggerated. And it's exaggerated because it's Hollywood. It's fun. It's entertaining. It's meant to be really over the top. Even if the people who wrote it didn't believe in energy vampires, and maybe they just kind of Google searched, what's an energy vampire? I hear it talked about all the time. Let's add a character who has that. The idea is that these are the most extreme versions that we see in Hollywood, just like with The Craft, where we have these girls who are able to walk on water and summon lightning. We know that witches don't do that in the physical reality. That is Hollywood. That's the glamour of Hollywood, right? It's meant to be entertaining. It's meant to be fun. Therefore, the idea of this Colin Robinson character. So, if you've ever seen the show, Colin Robinson is a very basic older white dude that's bald, has glasses, dressed for the office, works in an office space, and is the typical water cooler guy who has nothing fun to talk about, is very flat, very boring. People, when they talk to him, they are literally put to sleep because he's just so boring. But the idea is that because he's making them bored, he's feeding off of their energy. He's just draining them, right? So again, this idea of this person at work is annoying to talk to, they're so boring, they must be an energy vampire, is not at all the reality of the situation. Just because somebody is boring or someone doesn't vibe with us, they don't connect with us in that way, we're not going to get along with everybody. That doesn't make that person an energy vampires, right? And, you know, the other thing that's really important to address is that there are unhealthy relationships that we have in the mundane. And in a mental health way, those relationships are not healthy for us. But that doesn't mean every one of those unhealthy relationships is an energy vampire. And there can be crossover, but there's that very fine line, and we want to be discerning because we don't want to spiritually bypass. We don't want to just throw this term around and attach it to everything and anything and anyone and use it as an excuse to dislike somebody or use it as an excuse to validate our dislike or displeasure with a person, right? So again, there can be crossover. We can have relationships with people that are both unhealthy and also energy vampirism. But there are ways to discern that, which we will talk about a little later. So, first thing I'd like to do is kind of give you all an example of someone that I met who may fall under that category of energy vampire. And funny enough, yes, I did work with this person at a studio. So, some of you may know that I used to work in the animation industry and I was a character designer for about 6 years, a little over 6 years. And I was working on a production where this was before COVID, so we were all in the office and we all had cubicles, but it was very easy for people to come and go into other people's space. And in this studio, there was this older white guy who worked across from me. And he loved to come into my cube in the morning while I was trying to work to complain about anything and everything. This man never had anything kind to say. And he was always dumping his emotional baggage, his stress, his worries. Again, this was about anything and everything, not work appropriate at all. Sometimes he would be complaining about stuff at work, which honestly, the complaints that he had were very blown out of proportion, like something that was very small, and he was being very, very big about it. And so, you know, sometimes this happens, especially if you are someone who is an empath. Sometimes this happens. We can talk about this in an empath episode, but sometimes people will subconsciously sense that energy around you and will dump. And some people are just like that. You don't have to be an empath to have this happen to you, but it's more common if you're an empath, right? And so people will just kind of dump. And so this is what I thought was going on. I immediately thought, okay, well, this guy's just got a lot of baggage. He's just got a lot of stuff that he wants to complain about. And for some reason, he's picked me, possibly because I'm an empath. And this dude's just like venting. And it's whatever. It didn't bother me. His venting was not upsetting me. It was, obviously kind of annoying, but it wasn't like I was taking on his emotional energy because at that time I was a well-practiced witch and empath where I was able to filter out the things that were not mine. So I wasn't taking on his stuff. And I was just sort of like, okay, here he comes again, walking into my cube just to, complain, whatever, not a big deal. However, I started to recognize this pattern of him coming in, dumping on me, then acting far more energetic all day long while I felt drained. And I didn't feel that way until he came in. So I would be at work. I'd be going in early in the morning. I'm a morning person. I'm an early bird, fully energized. And at some point before noon, this guy would come into my cube and start talking. And like I said, he'd walk away, and all of a sudden he was way more peppy with everybody. And I would feel completely depleted, completely tired. I had been drinking coffee back when I drank coffee. There was no reason. There was no reason this was happening. And so when I started to notice this pattern, because that's the thing, when we're using our discernment, we're not just immediately jumping to, oh, this thing happened this one time and therefore that's what it is without a doubt. Like maybe our intuition is yelling at us, but sometimes it takes a few times to actually start to recognize that there's a pattern happening. So I was really unsure if what was happening was an unintentional energy vampire situation or just an unhealthy interaction of being this man's emotional dumping ground. Because I started to recognize that this was going on. But again, like I said, I wasn't 100% sure. So what I decided to do was I said to myself, okay, well, either way, no matter what this situation really is, whatever's going on, whether he's unintentionally being an energy vampire or he's just emotionally dumping and it's just like exhausting to me, I just want to take the extra precautions to be safe. Because as a witch, as an energy worker, this is one of the benefits, right? We can take our power back and we can take action on a metaphysical level. And so that's what I did. So I decided to take some precautions and I created a charm bag of warding for my cubicle. And so this little charm bag had different intentions set into it, different herbs, different blends, and it was a very discreet, tiny little bag, tiny little cloth bag. And the intentions that I put into it were essentially specifically directed at this man, no one else. And what I mean by specifically directed at this man, I mean that I wanted to make sure that, other people in the office, when they came in, they wanted to talk to me. It was always a lovely conversation. It was never a problem. So I wanted to kind of put up a filter, and that's what this little charm bag did. This little protective ward bag did. It made sure that it was filtering out specifically this one man and his energy, but more specifically, him physically. So the intention that I put in was that he's not allowed to talk to me unless it's work related. And that work related conversation has to be specific to taking care of things, like things that are actually uh, getting things done, prioritizing what we're working on, and not just like venting sessions, not just like complaining, not just like what he was doing. That unless he was coming in to talk to me specifically about a meeting or something that we had to do or whatever, that he was not allowed to come into my cubicle because I had had enough. And I was like, okay, before I literally tell him off in person, I'm going to try this first. And wouldn't you know it, it worked like a charm, literally. As soon as I put this charm bag up, which by the way, how I put it up in my cube for anybody who would like a office witch tip, put it in a little discreet bag. It can be even like decorative. And how the cubicle was set up was that the cubicle walls were kind of like placed where it was kind of like an entryway or a door. And so on my side, if I was sitting in the cubicle and I was looking out towards the door, on the inside, next to the door, I pinned that charm bag, that protective warding bag. And I pinned it so only I could see it if I was standing in my cubicle, or if only if people were in my cubicle looking out could see the charm bag. But it was kind of off to the side. It was decorative, like people didn't question it. It's not a big deal. And as soon as I put that up, he stopped coming to my cubicle. He stopped having these conversations with me. And it wasn't just at my cubicle, it was at work in general. But really, the cubicle entering was the problem. And so when that started to happen, when he stopped coming in, the other thing I noticed was I was no longer getting extremely drained. I was no longer getting this overwhelming, energetic flush out by midday. If anything, I went back to my regular, like, I'm tired because it's work, which is a different feeling. And this comes back to discernment. One of the most important things when it comes to understanding when we may be experiencing an energy vampire is being aware of our own energy, being aware of our own feelings, being aware of what it feels like on a normal day versus some things seeming to be off, right? Because if we don't have the understanding of our base level energy, then we're gonna have a hard time deciphering if we're sensing something else. And this is something that I find incredibly important with any kind of psychic work, is to make sure that we fully understand ourselves deeply on a physical, emotional, mental, and energetic level. So that way, when something is off, it sends up that little red flag. And that's kind of what was going on with this situation was that little red flag went up after a few times where I was like, well, this isn't typically how I feel when I come to work. This isn't typically like the kind of draining sensation that I get. And it was just so cool to see that immediate switch as soon as I put up that little warding bag that all of a sudden I had my energy back. And guess what? He kept all that energy to himself. And I noticed that as my energy came back to its normal feeling and sensation, that his energy was no longer peppy throughout the day because he was no longer coming to me and taking my energy. So, was he an energy vampire? I cannot say 100% without a doubt. But that's anything with this work, right? We can't say 100% without a doubt. We can only go off of our intuition. We can only go off of our experiences and what we've witnessed and what we've sensed. So I would say that he definitely meets all the categories, all the definitions. And my spell bag certainly worked against him. But I still hesitate to throw the label around without real serious thought and consideration. And this is, again, this is something I really want to drive home in this episode, is that, we can say, I think this person may have been an energy vampire, but who knows? I think they fall under that category, but who knows? Because again, we don't want to abuse the word, abuse this term, and bypass, right? So, You may be wondering, okay, so why would somebody intentionally or unintentionally, such as this guy at work, who was unintentionally, possibly unintentionally being an energy vampire, why would they do it? What would cause somebody to do it? So it really depends on whether or not it's intentional, right? But in general, people may do it because they want to feel good emotionally, right? They want to recharge their own batteries. They want to feel empowered, powerful. Or maybe it's to take on your traits that they want for themselves. Maybe you have a trait or a vibe. Let's call it a vibe, right? Maybe you have something that they admire and they want that for themselves. And that can be done through energy vampirism, right? If you're an empath, you may actually notice this, and this doesn't make an empath an energy vampire, but it can happen in a similar way where if you're an empath, and again, I should just do an episode on empaths really dive into a lot of this. But if you're around somebody who has a very different energy than your own and a different way of acting and reacting to things, or a way of like expressing themselves, you may notice yourself taking on similar traits as you hang out with this person. And sometimes that's because on a subconscious level, we're matching their energy. Like this happens whether or not you're an empath. It can happen way more extreme with empaths, though. But sometimes when we hang out with people, we match their energy. We match the way that they express themselves, the way that they say things, the way that they do things, and we get really in the zone and our energies blend in a healthy way. This in a healthy way, when I say that, is like when we have a bestie that we get along really well with, when we have a loved one, be it a friend or family member or found family, whoever, that we really truly love and are close with, sometimes we do this where we match their energy and we kind of blend energies, and it's healthy back and forth energetic exchange. An energy vampire is not doing a healthy back and forth energetic exchange. They're just taking it. Kind of like what we talked about at the beginning. They see it, they want it, they take it. So if they see that you have a way with being really like energetic and like fun with sassy with how you talk to people, they may tap into that aspect of your energy and take that. Again, could be intentional or unintentional. So let's kind of talk about the difference here. Let's talk about, we've already seen an example of unintentional. Because to be completely honest, I don't want to make any assumptions, but I don't think this guy at work, who was like in his like late 40s, very basic dude, I don't think he was a metaphysical practitioner of any kind. Based on like how he reacted to some of my books that I had out or my tarot cards, I definitely don't think he believes in any of this kind of stuff or did at that point, right? Um, so I don't believe he was intentionally doing it. But if it's intentional, if there's someone who has psychic, energetic, witchcraft practices, they don't have to have all of them, just one of them, right? If there's somebody who has these metaphysical practices, they may intentionally, mindfully, fully aware, take energy from other people for all kinds of reasons, whether that's to recharge themselves or to intentionally drain your energy coffers, or like I said, they maybe there's a personality trait that they would like to have of yours. There's so many different reasons why someone might do this. Now, the reason why I had actually initially written out this episode to talk about energy vampires is because, like in the past, in past episodes, I saw TikTok. So I was like, we need to talk about this. We need to talk about this in the parlor. So here we are, friends. We're in the parlor. We're having a discussion. Essentially, on this TikTok, and at this point, it's been like months since I've seen this video. And when this comes out, it's going to be quite a while. So I'm not even sure it's making circulation anymore. But in this TikTok video, this person was talking about intentionally being an energy vampire while they worked. Uh, So while they were at work in some kind of service industry job, which first and foremost, disclaimer here, service industry jobs are so freaking hard. As someone who has worked in the service industry for years before going to college and getting into animation, those people do not get enough. You work in the service industry, like more power to you. My gosh, people do not respect service industry workers. People walk all over them. This is no comment on service industry workers, what I'm about to talk about in this video that I saw on TikTok, but I just need to say that first and foremost. It sucks out there, and I am so sorry if you work a service industry job, and I'm sending you all the energy to get through those days. So, back to this TikTok. This person was saying that when they go to this job in the service industry, they will intentionally be an energy vampire to people who are not so nice to them at work. And I thought this was really interesting. They were talking, they weren't actually like talking, it was more like text on a screen. Just to be very, very clear about the video that I saw. And essentially, they were saying that if you're gonna act this way, then you're gonna get slapped, and I'm gonna take your energy and I'm gonna use it for myself because you don't deserve it if this is how you're acting. And I'm not saying that people cannot do energy vampirism. I'm not here to police how people practice their craft. I may have my own opinions and my own judgments, but I'm not going to be the type of person that will come on here and like start telling people you can't do that unless you're causing like harm, you're appropriating things of that nature. That's a different story. Ignorance, bigotry, we're not here for that, right? But as far as when people practice in this way, if they want to be an energy vampire, if you want to be an energy vampire, I'm not going to stop you. However, I would consider and I would ask, why would you want to take someone else's gunky stink energy? Right? Um, so for example, with this person, what I think personally, again, this is my personal beliefs and practices. I think a really great way to counteract people like that is if you create a shield, and this shield acts in a way that is like, okay, if you're going to send me negative energy, if you're going to act this way, if you're going to intentionally send negative energy to me in this way, this shield is going to take on that energy. It's going to transmute that energy into a cleaner, positive energy source that's for my best, and then I'm going to absorb it to empower myself. That's not energy vampirism. The difference is an energy vampire will intentionally suck somebody's energy, focusing on a particular person with intent. If we're talking again about an intentional energy vampire, versus when a shield does this kind of work, it's the energy is already being sent to you. Someone's sending you the evil eye, somebody's sending you ill intent, consciously or unconsciously. Essentially, what this shield is doing is saying, well, if you're already giving me energy, I'm just going to take it, I'm going to purify it, and then I'm going to drink it up. Thanks. Thanks for charging my batteries. But that's not what this person in this TikTok video was describing. This person in the video was describing that if someone irked them, if someone was being rude, if someone was they just didn't like somebody, that they were just going to drain them of their energy intentionally. They were going to take their energy and deplete them. And that's kind of like a very fine line difference, right, between the two things. If somebody's already sending you bad energy, fine. However, even with this, notice how I keep talking about transmuting and shifting and changing the energy and purifying it, right? Because again, why would you want to take on someone else's nasty energy? You don't know where it's been. It would be one of the examples I like to give people when it comes to this kind of stuff is let's say you're at a restaurant and the person next to you had a plate of food and they didn't finish it, and that person got up and walked away. And you're like, man, that food looks good. And then you go and eat off of that person's plate after they've left. And then you end up, surprise, surprise, getting sick because maybe that person was sick and you didn't know it. Maybe they had some sort of bug, right? Some sort of flu. And now you have it too. right? It's the same kind of idea. I know that's a weird example. I tend to go to food examples a lot because food is very important to me, so forgive me. Um, it's the Italian Mexican like love of like food and coming together and eating. Anyways, the point here is you don't know what's in other people's energy. You don't know what you're taking on when you just take it directly and then like put it in your own energy field. And this is why sometimes people who are starting out as like readers, who don't know how, or not even just readers, I mean anyone who is a practitioner who works in energy, in other people's energy, who experiences other people's energy, can sometimes get like energy sickness is because, and when I say energy sickness, I mean either overwhelmed or drained after doing like this kind of working. That's a whole topic, but the point is if you're not properly shielding and protecting your own energy, it's like fast food that gets stuck in your system and clogging your arteries. It's not great. It's not good to hold on to other people's stuff that's not yours. We all have our own like energetic signature. Again, this is my belief. And so when someone who maybe we're not close to, we take their energy or they send us energy, um, without consent, it can sometimes not be the best for us. That's why when we're around loved ones and our energies blend and they send us energy and we send them energy, it's a consent of energetic exchange. It's one that uh, is for our highest and best, that's sent with love, that's sent with good intentions, versus just taking on somebody else's stuff that we may not know even if we do know them, but they're going through a hard time and we're taking it on because we want to try to help them and we end up getting that energy stuck in us. We want to try to avoid that. And this all comes back to if you're intentionally being an energy vampire and you're taking other people's stuff and you're not filtering that energy first, it's not always the best idea, in my opinion, right? So, an example of vampirism work that could be beneficial, and this is something I kind of already touched on, is if someone is already intentionally sending you negative energy, transmute it. Use that energy in a way that's actually beneficial, where you transmute it because it's already being directed at you. You transform it to be beneficial, and then you use it to empower you. The key lesson is if you do choose to do vampiric work, you always want to transmute, purify that energy before you absorb it. So, how can you avoid being an accidental energy vampire? How can you avoid this? So, I get this question a lot. Whenever I talk about the evil eye or energy vampires, there are people who get really, really, really scared and really, really, really concerned that they're accidentally causing harm to people. And here's the thing, mindfulness and conscious awareness is absolutely key. If you are doing things, if you're taking actions with pure intentions, with positive intentions, then you don't have to worry about it, right? When we are engaging in a healthy relationship, again, I've already said this, but when we're engaging in a healthy relationship, there's consensual, energetic, emotional exchange that happens. So, asking yourself, am I actively giving as much as I am receiving in this relationship dynamic? Am I showing up and meeting this person halfway, energetically, emotionally, mentally, whatever that is? You know, um, for example, going back to the guy that I worked with at the studio, he was coming into my cubicle with the intention to complain and like dump, uh, just emotional dump on me. That was his intention. His intention was to go and vent to somebody so he could feel better. So, could that cause an accidental energy vampire? Yes. Because it wasn't him coming to me and asking me, how are you feeling? How are you doing? What did you think of that meeting and that request? Well, here's what I thought about it now that you've told me there's no exchange. There's no exchange happening. His only intention was to talk about himself and his feelings and the things that bothered him and the things that made him angry and then leave. And that's exactly what he did. Never asked me, never, it was never a conversation. And this is why I say being mindful is really helpful. So, knowing what your intentions are, knowing what your end goal is, will help you understand whether or not you are unintentionally being an energy vampire. If you're going and having a vent session with your friends and you ask them, like, oh my gosh, I gotta complain about work today. Can I complain about work today? Or you just have that one bestie who just gets it, and you when you vent to them, they're just like perfectly able to hold space for you. Maybe they also vent with you, and then you both have a good laugh about it. That's different, right? Because it's consensual. You're both in agreement of what is being exchanged here, energetically and emotionally and mentally. So, how can you prevent an energy vampire situation? First and foremost, you gotta have boundaries. You gotta have boundaries. And I know I talk about it all the time with anything energetic, psychic, witchy, boundaries. So important. So important. And when I'm talking about boundaries, I'm not just talking about metaphysical, energetic boundaries. I'm also talking about very mundane boundaries. So, again, for example, with this person in the office, I had not clearly stated on the mundane level my boundaries to this person. I did not tell him, actually, hold on. I did mention it, but I wasn't clear enough, I don't think. I had told him when he would come in, I would tell him that I was busy working on stuff, and then he would just continue to talk anyways. So, um, but upholding a boundary isn't just stating it and then letting somebody like cross that boundary, which is what I had done with this person. So that's on me. But it's clearly asking that person, like, for example, I could have told him, "Hey, I really can't talk right now. You're gonna have to leave." I didn't do that. I took the energetic boundary route and it worked. And if that hadn't worked, I would have had to take it to the next level mundanely, which is to straight up tell him to stop or tell my supervisor, you have to move me or him because this is not working out. Those kind of boundaries are just as important as the energetic ones. And if you have a situation like mine where you do a metaphysical energetic boundary and it works, fantastic. But it's important to be able to practice both when you can, if you can, depending on the situation. I understand it's hard, right? Also practicing protection magic, which also goes into boundaries, energetic boundaries. So there's all different forms of protection magic that you can do to kind of deter people from taking your energy, shielding, warding. Um, what I was talking about earlier in that situation where I created a protective spell bag and then put it in my cubicle. You could carry something around with you. You can have a piece of jewelry that you enchant to specifically protect your energy from people taking your energy. The list goes on and on and on. So if you're not already well versed in protection magic, definitely like do some research because there's all different things that you can do to help protect your energy. And then, of course, you can always call your energy back to you. I have a bunch of different classes on my Patreon, if you didn't know. Now you know. And we do calling back our energy. We do guided meditations in which I teach people how to call their energy back to them. Um, And that is something that you can absolutely do when it comes to feeling drained and feeling like you're having an energy vampire situation, or you just feel energetically drained for who knows what reason. Could be anything. Could be that we're giving our energy away. Could be anything. And then lastly, how to tell whether or not you actually have an energy vampire situation is first and foremost, like I've already mentioned, like use your discernment. Notice if there's a pattern. Notice if something keeps happening that goes beyond coincidence. You know, once or twice, maybe that's a coincidence. Three times, That's usually how I go by when it comes to stuff like this. I have a three-strike rule. If it happens for a third time, that can't be, that's too odd to be a coincidence at that point. And that's when I start doing investigative work. And this is where, as practitioners, we can really step into our power, being psychic detectives. And what that means is, maybe you work with tarot cards. Great. Ask the cards. Am I being affected by an energy vampire? Is someone intentionally or unintentionally draining my energy? Pull some cards on it. Maybe you use runes. Maybe you use pendulums. Maybe, you know, you wax read. Whatever divination methods that you use, that's a great way to kind of investigate if you are being affected, if you have something else going on, if it goes beyond just the mundane, right? And then, of course, you can always meditate on it. You can ask your higher self, you can ask your spirit guides, you can tap into them if you're using tools like I've already said, or not, and you're just kind of connecting in with your body and asking and see what, psychic sensations tend to react when you ask yourself those questions. um, Using your discernment through your psychic senses is a great way to really understand situations like this when you're trying to decipher if it's happening so you can take the appropriate steps forward. That's why we do this detective work, right? Is so we can see, is this what's really going on? And then once you know, like, oh, there's a very, very, very strong possibility that that's what's happening, you can take the next steps forward. You can figure out your path. So that's our energy vampire stories and episode. Yeah, definitely let me know if you've had energy vampire experiences before. You can, like I said, you can send an email, you can drop a comment. If you're watching this somewhere where you can leave comments, you can leave a comment. Um, Let me know your experiences. I'd love to chat about it with you. You can also head over to my Patreon. You can drop a comment on this episode on the Patreon and have discussions with other members and other people on Patreon, as well as myself, about energy vampires. Let's discuss it. Uh, Thank you all again for being here in the Oracle Parlor this week with me. I will see you all next time. Thank you so much for joining me in the parlor for this episode. If you want more psychic magical tips, make sure to follow me on Instagram and TikTok at Fantasma Witch. Fantasma Witch. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon, where I have a Discord community. I do Q&As, live classes, workshops, and more. To book a reading or consultation directly with me, you can go to my website, www.phantasmawitch.com. All of these links can be found in the episode description. And please, if you enjoyed this show, make sure you go leave a rating, leave a review, share it with others. It really helps the show to reach new listeners if you take a moment to do that, and it is sincerely appreciated. Shout out to the artist Cat Lines, who helped me to redesign the podcast logo to the beautiful magical teacup you see today. See you, mystical friends, in the parlor next time.